Good evening, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to the 23rd and final edition of Talk20 Hutch. I'm Kari May. I know. I'm Kari Mailloux, and alongside my partners Jackson Swear, Ryan Deal, Gregg Wamsley, and the fabulous staff of the Hutchinson Public Library, thank you for being here. Each Talk20, we like to get a sense for who is in the audience, honor those who have been with us on the journey, and celebrate those who join us along the way. And if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube right now, please say hello in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. But if you're in the room, please stand if you were at the very first Talk20 Hutch 12 years ago on January 24th, 2014. Oh, wow. You guys, awesome. Thank you for coming back. Prompted by my mother-in-law, how many of you, please stand, have been to all or most of the Talk20s in the last 12 years? Like, it's up to you how you define that. Yay. Thank you. Yay. Super fans. Love it. Please stand if you have presented at one of the previous 22 editions. That's pretty good. Great. Yay. Awesome. Thank you again for coming back. And then please stand if this is your very first Talk20 Hutch. Yay. Oh my gosh. That's a ton. Wow. Well, I think you guys will be in for a treat, and you can go back and watch all the 22 ones before this online on the YouTube channel. So hopefully you're hooked. So we're so excited you're all here to close this chapter with us. Talk20 uses the Pecha Kucha format. It's a fast-paced storytelling format using 20 slides, with each slide automatically advancing after 20 seconds, totaling a concise 6 minutes and 40 seconds for the entire presentation. It emphasizes visuals over text to keep the audience engaged and presenters focused on a clear, simple narrative. Created in Japan, its name means chit-chat, reflecting the quick conversational style that relies on strong imagery and a well-structured story. So this is the only time in your life that you'll listen to these 10 presenters sitting in this same row with these neighbors. So staying on the Japanese theme, ichigo ichii is a Japanese 4-character idiom meaning one meeting, one moment in your life that will never happen again. It's a reminder to be present, cherish interactions, savor rituals, and show sincerity. How might you change because of tonight? How might we all change together? Ichigo, ichii. When Patsy Terrell, Gregg Wamsley, and I started Talk20 Hutch 12 years ago, it was an experiment to test out Hutch's hunger for connection and community that has been affirmed over and over nearly every 6 months since. It's been an incredible touchstone for so many of us each January and July to sit together in a crowded library and listen to our neighbors' personal stories and passions. But we never had a plan for when it would end. We kept it going because you, the people, kept coming. People kept saying yes when we asked them to present. And because we needed the civic ritual, because there were always more stories to tell. And yet, most of us have lived several lives since that day in 2014 when we started. For Patsy, her life was cut way too short in June 2017. And then Ryan and Jackson filled her shoes, Talk20 shoes, in 2019. And for all of us, we've either added children to our families, changed jobs, taken on more responsibilities, or found our bandwidths generally stretched to do the good biannual volunteer work of putting on this event. After we all acknowledge that truth to each other, it's okay, lives change, we felt it was time to bring Talk20 Hutch to an end after 12 years and 23 gatherings. But one of the core goals of Talk20 is to spark connection and conversation. So you're not just a passive listener, but a part of the evolving community story. So we want to take the occasion of the last Talk20 as an invitation to spark new ideas and experiments that will bring neighbors together. Because as we all know, we need this connection now more than ever. Stitching together the social fabric of Reno County is an infinite task that requires all of us doing our part. In 2015, Patsy wrote, "Talk20 is an example of what can be done when ideas and people connect, but it has to start somewhere. You have ideas and people that need connection too. They're waiting for you to build those bridges." So let's build some bridges tonight. Here's how we talk about Talk20. Talk20 is not a lecture, but a gathering, an informal exchange of stories and ideas. Talk20 is an experience, a night when you should expect the unexpected. Talk20 is not exclusive, but inclusive. It runs on the idea that everyone has a story to tell. Talk20 is curiosity, open minds, humor, heartbreak, education. Talk20 is what we make it. Tonight you're going to hear a little bit of everything. Each of our presenters will have 20 slides and only 20 seconds per slide to tell a story. We'll have a 15-minute intermission after the first 5 for connection and conversation. And after the event, we hope you'll join us downtown at Salt City Brewing to continue the conversations sparked by tonight's presentations. Because Talk20 doesn't end with the last presenter or even the last event. It continues through the connections we make, the conversations we have, the moments months from now when we recall a talk, an image, or a storyteller that stayed with us. So let's get started. Here's Jackson to introduce our first presenter.
When Greg Holmes bought an Alfigural coin bank at a novelty motel in Kentucky, he soon became valet and chauffeur to Ace Jackalope, a role that led to surprising opportunities. Please welcome Greg with On the Road with Ace Jackalope.
Where's Kari? Hello? Okay. Oh. Hi. You know how you buy a souvenir at a tourist trap and you set it on the dashboard and then you dress it up and your friends create a whole mythology around it and you end up, dressing it and hiring people to make stuff for it. That's kind of what happened here. That's a very early example, nothing on it. There's the scuba lope. For the Canadian lope, Patsy and I were waiting in line to get into Canada, and I'd bought a teddy bear without outfit, so I was eviscerating it in the line to go past the booth, and right up when we got to the guy who decides if you can come in or not, I'm holding a head. So Ace has been on Route 66 from giant hot dogs in Chicago to the beach in Santa Monica and the Lincoln Highway from Times Square to San Francisco, where he held a Hutchinson flag, something I learned about at a previous Talk20. For photos in Lindsberg, I had Shirley Malm, who's made a lot of the Dala stuff up there, make a Dala lope. And when I put the pictures on a blog, I discovered people were actually looking at that. School kids and teachers wrote and said, is it the same critter? I was surprised. And one time I got bored and there were a whole bunch of chocolate bunnies and Peeps on clearance sale after Easter. And so Ace had to lead them in a rebellion and kind of a Patton and Lord of the Rings parody. And if you want to make chainmail, you just get springs that work on screen doors. For London, there was Sherlock Lope at 221B. The Weirlope of London, who went all the places in the Warren Zevon song. We met Tim Curry after a performance of Spamalot. The Nosferatu Lope haunted Highgate Cemetery, and the Beefeater Lope protected the Tower of London. In 2007, I was interviewed by CNN. And the story ran once before being bumped by, I think it was Lindsay Lohan, got drunk and got in a car, and that dumped it out of the rotation. But the story was about how I'd shot a lot of pictures with Ace in Greensburg. You see him there. And being a Trekkie, I had to go to Riverside, Iowa, where the tourism people say that Jim Kirk will eventually be conceived under a pool table. And, I used to have a job shooting for conventions, so I got Nimoy. And for meeting Matt Smith, a Doctor Who fan, I had to have a fez for that. Garrison Keillor said, "Whatever the joke is, I'm in on it." Weird Al held the accordion's a Christmas ornament from Adrian's A to Z, I think in Bueller. And Alice Cooper, while doing Ace's eye makeup, said, "This will only hurt for a moment, and then you'll be immortal." In 2007, Ace was asked, not me, but Ace was asked to write a sidebar for a book called Roadside Attractions on his favorite roadside attractions, and I helped him choose novelty architecture, like the wigwam motels in Cave City and in Arizona and California. And his suit is made entirely out of keychains from gas stations. So novelty architecture in Hutch, we have the cool windmill that currently is missing its windmill part out on 4th Street. And we have a drugstore that looks like a castle that was remodeled or added onto recently and kept the theme very, very well. We also have a third piece of novelty architecture that what I head to every time there's a really good lightning storm. And there are 3 of those in the country. There's 2 other old mills, one in Iowa and one in Minnesota. The Minnesota one's a fairyland, and the one in Iowa is just a long, dark tunnel. And ours, of course, is a house of horror. Speaking of black and white horror movies, this is a brief lesson in keeping your trip a little loose so that serendipity can have its fun with you. I was just going to blast on through Bedford, Pennsylvania after shooting at the Coffee Pot when I met Kevin, who invited me to see his band at a restaurant, introduced me to his partner, Kyra. She asked what we did for fun in Hutch, and I told her about bad sci-fi. She said, "What movies do you watch?" "Night of the Living Dead," I replied. She was in it. She was the little girl that killed her mom with a trowel. So she ate Ace's brain, and I wouldn't have had that experience that I just blasted through. I was back in that neck of the woods a few years later. It's a long story for here, but because of Ace's blog, I shot some cicadas and got the attention of entomologists, which got me a job working on The Mating Game, a David Attenborough series on a cicada segment. And then sometimes you can't find a cheese hat, so you just have to use a piece of cheese. This was a trip with my mom and my brother to Wisconsin to photograph large fiberglass things, which are a mainstay of people who like weird tourist stuff. So what do we have along that line here? Well, we have that huge top of a guy out at Vintage Market at the mall. And if you wonder why his arms are like that, it's because he's from a mold to make Big John the grocery boy. We caught up to one of those in Metropolis, and of course, Ace, being from Smallville, had to go along and fly to Metropolis, where, of course, there is this cool Superman statue. Now, we need a Clark Kent statue, I think. And also, Cincinnati Union Terminal, comic people here might recognize that as Justice League headquarters from the last Superman movie and from the comics and cartoons and such. We've got another great tourist opportunity here if it gets off the ground. The downtown master plan contains a neon alley that would house some signs like the Johnson Music sign, which is actually in storage, and the Coberly sign. So that's something that those of us tending toward tourist stuff would love. But speaking of love, I have a thing for roadsides, and coming up with some sort of theme that fits those. Done all of the holidays that way, basically. But anyway, it's been a blast, and it's taken me places that I never thought I would go when I bought this little thing, in a roadside stand.
A community land trust is being formed for Reno County. What benefit is it for our community? What benefit is it for each of us? Here's Shara Gonzales to explain what the heck is a community land trust.
Okay, well, tonight we're going to explore the question of what the heck is a community land trust. And basically, it's affordability in our community for housing so that we don't all live down by the river. We all know what the problem is. The problem is that, what is the problem? The problem is that prices have gone sky high, so that people can't afford housing, and it's harder and harder for people to get to affordability to be able to own a house, even within our own community. So what the heck is a community land trust? Well, it's or a CLT. It's where we divide the land from the house in separate ownership. It's the secret sauce that keeps everything affordable. The walls, the roof are yours, and the ground underneath it belongs to a nonprofit community land trust. Like an Oreo cookie divided here, the idea is the trust holds the cookie and the frosting is your home. The owner of the house secures a mortgage just like anyone else, in a conventional way. And then with that, they sign a long-term lease on the land itself with a community land trust. But it doesn't mean you're stuck there forever. You can sell it at any point. The community land trust gives you a 99-year lease, which is a long-term relationship. It establishes a permanent, stable relationship with the people living in the house. Why do we bother with this? Because the land is what is expensive over time. Those are the prices rising on land versus what's happening with houses. So we remove that aspect by separating the two. It means a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, or even your favorite barista can actually live in a home in the area that they work in. Excuse me. And more people then can own their own homes and create a stable neighborhood, which creates a stable community. Is it a rental? Not at all. You are a homeowner building real equity. You get your mortgage payments back when you leave, and plus a fair portion of the home's appreciation when you sell. It's the best of both worlds, stability and investment. The trust part of the name means we agree on a resale formula right at the very beginning. This ensures that while you're making a nice profit on your investment, the house remains at a price point that stays affordable for the next family moving in. It's like a handoff in a relay race. You got a break on the price when you bought it. Now you're handing that break, that affordability off to the next family to live in that home. Community land trusts also protect neighborhoods from housing speculators. We don't need our streets to become a monopoly board of outside large corporations investing, and this helps guarantee that is a continual affordability passed on to members of the community. Who runs the community land trust? We all do. It's the homeowners, it's the neighborhoods, it's people involved in housing in our community. These are the people that make the decisions about the land in our community. And it's not just for houses. You can put community gardens, you can put in small businesses, you can hold parks, neighborhood parks, all of which are benefiting the people living in the neighborhood and living in the community. And it's not some brand new risky experiment. It's been in existence for over 50 years, and there's over 300 of them in the United States, some in big cities and oftentimes in small rural communities. A CLT, or community land trust home, looks like just any other house in the community, or on the block, excuse me. It's just the hidden hero of the neighborhood, quietly keeping housing well maintained through lawn and home maintenance care, and affordable for the long haul. And now these are areas you can see where community land trusts are in the United States. Currently, if you look at Kansas, there are in Lawrence, they're in Kansas City, and in Wichita. It doesn't show that there. The ability to be able to utilize part of the membership into the community land trust allows for maintenance of the house to happen, maintenance, lawn care. And what that does is it allows us not only to have affordable housing, but well-kept housing, which is another piece of what happens in our deteriorating neighborhoods. To be clear, it's not government housing. It's definitely not communal living. It's simply a smart way to make the American dream of home ownership a bit more realistic and attainable for hardworking people in our community. In the end, we're building roots, not real estate. We're making sure our kids and grandkids can actually afford to live where they grew up. So let's dig in, join us, and let's continue to grow the Community Land Trust.
Classical Revolution ICT is redefining the classical music experience in alternative venues. With events like Beethoven and Beer and Bach and Brews, they are changing the ways people think about classical music and building community along the way. Please welcome Alex Johnson with Bringing Classical Music to a Brewery Near You.
I started playing the bassoon when I was 12. I did honor bands, youth symphony. I even won a concerto competition my senior year. And when I learned there was a degree that involved practicing 4 hours a day, I said, sign me up. That one is for me. That took me to the University of Iowa and then Florida State University, where I studied music performance and arts administration. And that combination, being inside music and really perfecting my craft, and then thinking about how people experience it and how to bring people into classical music when we're always told that the arts are dying, yet there's still a need that's demonstrated all the time. But that's where this story really begins. At Florida State, I discovered Classical Revolution at a brewery called Ology. On Monday nights at 8 o'clock, the tap room would fill with music students from the College of Music listening to other College of Music students, and sometimes professors play classical music over beer. Classical Revolution made Mondays exciting. It was casual, and people talked while performers played, often with casual banter on either side of the stage. It felt like musicians blowing off steam and sharing something they loved with people who really understood what went into it. My favorite night was a trombone quintet. They played something prepared and then they pulled out a book and just sight read live. They laughed through their mistakes, they leaned into the chaos and had an incredible time doing it. That night showed me what classical music could feel like. My least favorite night was when a violin professor played Paganini. Paganini is the big, scary, highly technical violin composer that all violinists are slightly terrified of. His students, who weren't normal Classical Revolution attendees, came and they shushed the room. Any noise you make, you gotta glare. And suddenly it felt like a recital hall again, and it totally killed the vibe. That is what you do not want at a Classical Revolution. So when I started thinking about bringing Classical Revolution to Wichita, I knew the goal wasn't virtuosity or perfection. It was energy and casual connection, a space where classical music feels human and not intimidating. I mentioned this idea to someone who happened to own our coffee house in Riverside, and he liked it. So on Thursday, August 25th, 2022, we held the very first Classical Revolution in Wichita. It was small, very small, but it existed, and that mattered more than the size of the audience. And after a few slow events, we needed a change. I heard about a goat-themed event at Tor Brewing, and I thought, if they'll host goats, They will host classical music. So 30 minutes after bringing this idea up, we went over to Tor Brewing, and Aaron, the owner, was excited to give it a try. But Classical Revolution doesn't really tell people what to expect, so we branded this program as Bach and Brews, setting expectations, so people would know that they were getting classical music, beer, and presumably a relaxed atmosphere, because does that say formal to you? It set clear expectations and helped the right audience find us. Every event follows the same model. We have 3 sets, about 30 minutes each. Musicians introduce themselves, talk to the audience, and invite interaction. That is a core part of what we do. They pick their own rep, anything from Baroque to contemporary classical, including new compositions by local composers at Wichita State and beyond. And this is a paid gig for our musicians since day one in the coffee shop. We encourage musicians to engage with the audience, to humanize the performers and build connection across the music stand, because we don't really use a stage. When people feel included, they return. And some musicians take it further, inviting participation and turning a set into a shared experience. Our first Bach and Brews was in March of 2023, and we have held one every month since then with a full slate of musicians. And we finally found the right vibe, the right musicians, audience, and venue all aligned, and the idea caught on. We have an average attendance of 45 at our Bach and Brews events every month. After a year of Bach and Brews, it was clear this wasn't a one-off series. Musicians kept coming back, and audiences did too. So we became a nonprofit in 2024, and this is the founding board. We wanted to protect what was working and make sure it could last. And then in 2025, we expanded to Hutchinson with Beethoven and beer at Sandhills Brewing. The same model, the same values, but a new community, a community that was hungry for classical music after the symphony closed. And we love an alliteration, so hence Beethoven and beer. Since we started in July 2025, we've had an average attendance of 105 people at Beethoven and beer every month. Great job, Hutchinson. Audiences come and continue to come, and conversations start around classical music and anything else you can imagine. And Beethoven and beer happens every 4th Tuesday, and it feels like it belongs here. We've also tried other types of events beyond breweries, and we plan to do more in the future. This is Pachelbel in the Park on Make Music Day. We might be workshopping that name in the future. We had some families wander by, just enjoying the park on a picnic, and they joined us, and that was the ideal, bringing people in. One example to pull at the heartstrings. One night, Lillian surprised her mom with a duet with her brother Caleb on her mom's birthday. They hadn't played together since high school. That's their mom in the audience with the tissue. I am proud of the stage we have created for local musicians to present their art without the typical pressures of performance that come with classical music. Here are just some of the musicians we featured just last year alone. We're not lowering the bar for classical music, we're widening the door, and once people walk through, they stay. Classical Revolution ICT is redefining the classical music experience by bringing music into places people already gather: breweries, coffee shops, parks. What started as a way for musicians and audiences to connect has become something more: a dependable monthly community where people show up, share space, and connect.
Growing up, Jason Steele had heard that his great-uncle was lost at sea in World War II. He was curious about the details, but the family members who knew them had passed away. Eventually, through military records, he was able to piece together more of the story of his uncle's service and ultimate sacrifice for our country. Here's Jason with The Cost of Freedom.
This is my great-uncle Pete, my grandmother's brother. Growing up, I'd heard bits and pieces about his service in the Navy during World War II. He was lost at sea on a ship called the USS Langley. When I was older and wanted to know more about his story, my grandmother and her siblings were no longer living. If I wanted to know more, I knew I would have to figure it out myself. Purdy A. Sharp, or Pete, was born on January 2nd, 1910, in Langdon. He had 6 brothers and sisters, including my grandmother, Catherine. He was just a few months old in this picture. He grew up in Reno County, where his father, William Sharp, my great-grandfather, was the superintendent of schools for several years. Here he is in his Navy uniform somewhere tropical. If I wanted to learn more about his military service, I would need to request a copy of his now public military records from the National Archives. I filled out the required forms and mailed them off. After a nearly year-long wait, I received a large package of papers in the mail. It was time to look through them. Here's his enlistment application from 1929. He indicated a desire to be a musician. Either that didn't work out or those slots were full because he went on to join the medical corps. That's a theme in my family's military service. Both of my grandfathers were Army medics. And his middle name? Adolf. I imagine he kept that quiet during the war. Apparently, since he was not yet 21, he had to have a parent's consent to join the service. Here my great-grandfather gave his notarized permission for his enlistment. I imagine he was proud that his son was going to serve his country, learn a trade, and probably see the world. Little did he know that fate would have more in mind just 13 years later. Fast forward about 2.5 years to 1931. Now, pharmacist mate 3rd Class Sharp, a Navy medic, has applied to attend a school in New York to learn about electrocardiograph technique. To attend this school, he's also agreeing to extend his enlistment a further 1 to 2 years. He must have liked working as a medic. His request was approved. I found a summary of his service assignments from 1929 to 1934. It appears he was inducted in Kansas City and attended boot camp in San Diego, where he then started his training in the medical corps. He served in Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and Virginia before winding up at the Navy Hospital in Pearl Harbor. Then something must have changed. In February of 1934, he requested a special order discharge from the Navy that was granted. He was still serving at the Naval Hospital in Pearl Harbor at the time. I wondered what would have led to that decision. Had something happened? Did he no longer enjoy life in the Navy? I would have to look further to find out. Then I found this letter sent to the Navy in 1936 by a doctor in New Jersey who was trying to find my uncle to offer him a position with his medical practice. He stated that he believed he left the Navy to return home during the Depression. It all made sense. He must have decided that he could better help support his family during the Depression in civilian life instead of the service. Either that didn't work out so well or the family's prospects improved, because in 1939 he wrote a letter to the Navy recounting the details of his discharge and requesting re-enlistment. There are handwritten notes on the bottom corner, probably from a clerk, noting his original time in the service, his current age, almost 30, and that he had no offenses. His request was approved. He rejoined the Navy, and by 1940 he had been promoted to pharmacist mate 2nd class. In early 1941, this transfer sheet notes that he had completed a training course to be eligible to promote to pharmacist mate 1st class. The sheet also notes his transfer to the USS Langley, which would be his fateful final assignment. Here's the Langley, named for astronomer Samuel Langley, pictured in 1937. She began service as a collier in the 19-teens before being converted into the first U.S. aircraft carrier in 1920. Her service during World War II was as a seaplane tender. Her final mission was carrying 32 P-40 fighters and their crews from Australia to Java, Indonesia. This postcard was mailed by my uncle while underway on the Langley to his father here in Hutchinson on February 7, 1942. It may have been the last mail that he ever sent. On it, he pokes fun at his delay in sending letters back home and mentions that he has sent a money order to his sister, my grandmother, as a gift for her upcoming birthday. In the early morning hours of February 27, 1942, a fleet of Japanese bombers attacked the Langley and her escorts south of Java near where the star is on this map. The fight lasted into the early afternoon, with the critically damaged Langley eventually being abandoned and purposely sunk by her escorts to prevent her falling into enemy hands. This book, Pawns of War, details that final battle and fight in which the Langley was lost. In a horrific twist of fate, the survivors of the Langley were picked up and transferred to the USS Pecos, and it too was attacked 2 days later and sunk. Following the battle, 288 crew from the Langley were missing in action, including my uncle. The loss would eventually total 319. 2 weeks after the battle, my great-grandmother received this telegram from the Navy Department notifying her that her son was missing in action in the performance of his duty. I can only imagine the fear and uncertainty that this must have caused her and the rest of the family, a feeling that the families of the nearly 79,000 other personnel missing in action shared during the war. Finally, in December of 1945, after more than 3.5 years, my great-grandparents received this letter from the Navy providing some details of the battle that had occurred and of the sinking of both the Langley and the Pecos. As my uncle was not found among those liberated from prisoner of war camps, he was declared deceased, having given his life for his country. In the Philippines, at the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial, stand the Tablets of the Missing. Inscribed among them are the names of over 36,000 U.S. service members who were missing in action or lost at sea during World War II in the Pacific. My uncle's name can be seen on the 6th line in this photo. His name is also inscribed among the nearly 16,000 veterans on the Reno County Veterans Memorial, located in South Hutchinson. It can be seen here in the middle of the picture. It is so very important that we don't forget anyone who has served our country to defend our freedoms, especially those who have given their lives in that service. I like to think that given his training and position in the medical corps, my uncle was one of those who were helping to care for the wounded during the battle on the Langley or after the battle on the Pecos. As Mr. Fred Rogers once said, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." Purdy A. Sharp was 32 years old. May he rest in peace in honored glory. Thank you.
In her late 20s, Kari discovered a Kurt Vonnegut quote that captured and framed the way she wanted to live. What should young people do with their lives today? Many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is to create stable communities in which the terrible disease of loneliness can be cured. Since moving back to Hutchinson in 2013, she's tried to live up to that dare by creating experiences and places that nurture depth, connection, and belonging. Here's Kari with On Making.
Ever since I was a young child, I've been obsessed with places and how I felt inside of them. I would draw floor plans for new homes, trying to design for maximum windows and spaciousness. Proximity to direct natural light was key, the life source for any space. I would rearrange my bedroom furniture every few months, always trying to get the placement of each piece just right to ease something inside of me. The best location for the bed, I found, was such that I could look out the open blinds at night and see the moon, imagining someplace other than here. In graduate school, I landed in an apartment that was seemingly insulated from natural light. I added mirrors as pseudo windows and adopted a cat to make the place feel more alive. I dyed my hair black and wrote dark poetry and blotted my escape to an apartment with a balcony where I believed I'd feel better. I was studying creative writing, minding my life to make sense of why I felt so off, why I was always tinkering with arrangements and light. It was the writing and, even more so, the desire to revise and edit my life that led me to discover processes that gave language and order to making spaces. Discovering the concept and practice of placemaking in my late 20s provided a framing for what I had been trying to do in my own homes and the environments I was experiencing that felt authentic and alive. It's people first, design second. It's place specific and iterative. Then I learned about place attachment, place science, and the soul of the community study that found social offerings, aesthetics, and openness in a community mattered most to people feeling attached to a place. The things to do with others, the way a community looked and felt, and how welcome people felt to be there. It all starts with noticing, observing how people use a space, what they do there or wish they could do there, and how they interact within it. For me, it was taking the same study I'd been doing on myself in all of my rooms all of those years and applying it to other people and other spaces. After making observations and asking the people who use the space what they want and need to do there, you get clear on a space's purpose. Just like creating an inside room, you add appropriate seating and surfaces, light and shade, color and art, food and drink. It's that same urge and process that led Greg, Patsy, and I to experiment with Talk20 12 years ago. Talk20 had a clear purpose, a defined format, room for 10 wildly different stories, and a home and a place where everyone could feel welcome and a little less lonely. The placemaking principles extend to gathering, too, as Priya Parker so brilliantly captured in her book, The Art of Gathering. We've created one-of-a-kind rooms 2 nights each year. We pay attention to what our neighbors and friends are telling us. We find comfort in the expected format and setup. Like you all, I had a lot of time to notice what felt good or wrong in my home in 2020. In the rush to set up remote work, I used a folding table and metal chair as a makeshift office in my basement and worked that way through anxiety for the first several months. It was dark in more ways than the absence of light. But every day, I was Zooming with my community of coworkers, finding solace in regular digital connection. It was in that headspace that I stumbled upon cozy minimalism, a name and a process for the kind of homemaking I'd been trying to do since I was a child. I softened the edges of our rooms and learned how to orient toward the light. Once you realize that there is an order and a process for making a place and a gathering, and you realize that the elements are really quite simple if you start with a clear purpose, you can look outside your front door and start where you are. As I've worked through my rooms, I've also turned my attention to my neighborhood, that familiar extension of our home. It's the shared space for my family and our neighbors. What does placemaking and gathering look like out there? Of course, it starts with noticing and purpose, then seating and shade and food and drink. We like alliteration too, Alex. We've hosted donuts on the driveway and pie in the park over the years. Each time, we all meet new people, put names to house numbers, talk about what we love about our neighborhood, and say we should do it again soon. You can pick any food and any place to create a gathering. Just alliterate, and it works. The most daring thing is to create stable communities in which the terrible disease of loneliness can be cured. It takes patience to listen to what a space or people are telling you. But that's how spaces are made, how people create ownership and attachment. We make our places. We create the belonging. In her book, This Is Where You Belong, Melody Warnick identifies 11 principles for place attachment. 1. Our towns are what we think they are. 2. Emotion follows behavior. Feelings follow action. 3. If you want to love your town, act like someone who loves your town would act. 4. When you're happy and healthy, then you're happy and healthy where you live. 5. If you love your city, you should do what's good for it. And what's good for your community is usually good for you. 6. Relationships with people are what make you feel most at home. 7. Every town is good at something. Do what your town is good at. 8. Put pins in the map. Happy memories create place attachment. 9. When you invest, you feel invested. 10. There is no right town for everyone, just the right town for you right now. 11. Experience joy for as long as you're here. I'm not designing for just myself anymore. I have 3 daughters with a stake in this place, and my hope is that they will dare to find the light wherever they are, for themselves and for all of you.
We have arrived at the intermission, but this time we're not just going to turn on the lights and tell you we'll start again in 15 minutes. This last time, we're going to give you an assignment. For the next 15 minutes, we invite you to find 2 people you don't know well, or at all, and have a conversation. I heard the groans. You can turn your chairs around or move to another part of the room. Start here. What's one talk, image, or presenter from Talk20 through the years that has stayed with you, and why? Then, go a step further. If Talk20 were to live on in a new form, what kind of gathering do you wish existed in our community right now? You might consider a place you'd want to meet, a library, a backyard, a park, a brewery, a living room. A format that fits your season of life. One story, one question, one walk, one meal. A group you'd love to see more connected. Neighbors, parents, creatives, newcomers, elders, teens. There's no pressure to solve anything tonight. Just notice what you're hungry for and what you'd be willing to help make happen. For those of you watching online, we'd love for you to respond to the prompt in the comments. As Patsy reminded us, ideas and people are waiting for bridges. This might be the moment one starts.
Welcome back. If you wish you had had more time to talk, that's a good sign. It means that something real was happening. Hold on to it. If you come back to it later tonight, you can come back to it later tonight or over a drink at Salt City. What you just did is exactly what Talk 20 was always meant to do. Not just listen, but notice. Not just consume stories, but let them change how you see your neighbors and what's possible here. You don't need to report out. You don't need to leave with a long list, to-do list. Just carry the question with you. What connections might I help strengthen in this community? Later tonight, we'd love it if you would leave a comment on the Talk20 Hutch Facebook page with your reflections and ideas so we can capture some of the seeds you just planted. But now, let's settle back in and hear from our final 5 presenters. Gary started his journey of a long-term recovery in 2022 and has since built his life and career around giving back to the community that poured their hearts and souls into him, into helping him become the man that he is today. The process is not something that can be done alone. Please welcome Gary with The Power of Recovery and Community.
Hi. This will be the first time I told my story without saying a cuss word. So, Jackie, you got me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my name is Gary Race. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I grew up in Hutchinson, Kansas, the youngest of 6 siblings. My mom had her first kid in 1976. From 1985 to 1992, she had a total of 5 kids. We're all 7 years apart. Part of my story is that I am an incest survivor, but I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. My mom was a single mother. She had me and then was single for all of my life. She's been a registered nurse since 1976. She filled our home with love, history of vaccinations, always making sure we were healthy. She served at the Hutchinson Clinic and worked for Hospice House. Pictured there is my grandma. So my mom, me being the last, she was older when she had me, and my grandma was retired. So my grandma had a huge part in raising me. My mom moved her here when I was very, very young after we moved here from Wichita. And most of my adult life, my grandma made it very clear to our other grandkids that I was her favorite. So there's a picture of me in active use of heroin and IV meth with my history of substance use disorder. You'll see I'm holding bleach and some other cleaning supplies. I think everything in that picture was clean except for me. And so that was probably the deepest that I had ever been in active use of substance use disorder. That was right before I went to prison with an KDOC number of 121391. I do want to preface this by saying that substance use disorder is not a criminal act, it is a disease. I was never really a criminal. Substances played a huge part in where I landed in that. So that was right before I got released from Lansing. So the first time I found recovery was in March of 2020. As you can see, I look a lot different. There was life back in my eyes, and I was ready for a new way of life after being at a point of desperation for so long and tired of the way that I had been living. So after being in prison and drug court, or prison and jail and everything for so long, drug court was the thing that actually finally stuck for me. I was released from jail on March 20th of 2020. That was the last time that I had ever went in. During that time, I was under the intensive supervision of Officer Liberty Thompson. From drug court, I also moved into Oxford House. That played a huge role in my life. I was very involved in leadership the whole time that I was in Oxford, and it helped me find a new way of life at the time when it was what I needed. I lived in a total of 3 different Oxford houses over the span of 22 months. And in that time, I did a lot of things, and that's where I transferred from working in the food restaurant industry for most of my adult life to the transitional jobs program at New Beginnings. I interviewed with the staff and other participants in the program. It was another avenue that helped me work through my barriers and the things that were keeping me from being a stable and productive member of the community of Hutchinson. So on June of 2022, I had a return to use, and it was the interruption of the process. There were a lot of things that I wasn't willing to change about my life, even though I was in recovery. There were people I wasn't willing to let go of. There were places I wasn't willing to quit going to, and there was a lot of work that I hadn't done before. So that relapse lasted for a total of 3 months, and my new date of recovery is October 9th of 2022. So my life looks completely different this time in recovery than it did the first time. There was a lot of work that wasn't done before. So I will never want it to be misconstrued that I am the face of any 12-step fellowship anonymous program, but I am part of a 12-step fellowship. That was the work that wasn't done before. I got a sponsor, I started working steps, and got to the root cause and really found out that drugs and alcohol were just a symptom of a disease that I had. I had to address the trauma that I wasn't willing to face before. So as you'll see here, the replacement of substances I'm talking about, I became addicted to food. Substance use disorder shows up in many different ways, and food was a comfort. I ate to feel good. I ate to feel happy. And it was hard to find an avenue or something, but I woke up and I didn't want to weigh 310 pounds anymore. If you want to zoom in, because I know I look so skinny in this picture, I don't know if you can see it, but on January 6th of 2020 was when I woke up at that point of desperation and knew that I had to do something different. And so part of being in recovery was another thing I had to change, was my relationship with food. But I also had to find out that I was more than just someone recovering from substance use disorder. I woke up one day and found out that recovery was my entire personality, right? So I had to find something different, something that meant something to me. And then what that meant for me was live music, several different types too. I went to rock shows, Christian concerts, and then I started in community work at the Reno County Health Department under the leadership of Candace Davidson and Megan Gottschalk. And this was rarely where I got back to working in the community. I had already had some dipping into nonprofit at this point. I did a lot of great things working in public health, and I learned a lot about myself in that position. And now this is where I've landed. I work for United Way of Reno County in a program called Reno Connections that is actually placed here in the library and several other entities around town, where I work solely in childcare under an early childhood block grant and work with my clients. I also serve on several community boards. I'm very happy with where I landed. So a lot of you know Valerie Taylor. The power of advocacy is she has always somehow showed or been an authority figure in my life, and she has always advocated for me in rooms that I haven't been in. The power of advocacy and her having a huge part in the person and the professionally who I am today, and showing me a new way. So I'll close on this. So our community is made of diversity. I'm also a homosexual male in long-term recovery, and I fought tooth and nail to be taken seriously around a lot of the tables that I set around today. So I'll close with a quote by Mia Carella, and that is, inclusion is not just inviting someone to your table, it is believing that they belong there.
What does accessibility look like, and how does it affect our communities? Elise Unruh, who currently relies on a wheelchair for her mobility, will share her perspective on why this is important and ideas for how we can build a more accessible community. Here's Elise with Framing Accessibility with support from her mom, Heidi.
To get here this evening, it took 10 accessibility tools to get from my bedroom to the car, plus assistance. Today I'm focusing on physical mobility issues, but I can only speak from my own experience. There are a wide range of disabilities. Every person's experience and perspectives are unique, and needs are unique. What accessibility looks like for me may not look the same for others. I have been very privileged in my access to mobility tools and resources that are often out of reach for others.
So sorry. So this is the library, and
We're gonna do a little props for the library in this next one. So accessible designs in the built environment allow people to get around, and so those arrows represented wide walkways, lots of parking, and accessibility for multiple entrances. But accessibility can only go so far.
Without societal changes as well. To protect people's rights and opportunities and dignities. Imagine a classroom that provides left-hand scissors, but is only, but students are discouraged from using them. We need like laws like the Americans with Disability Act, cultural norms, and representation to.
Okay, so I'm going to talk now about my journey of learning about accessibility through Elise, and as you can see, there are literally ups and downs in that. So at first it was all about fixing problems, figuring out what she couldn't do and how to help her, and how to get to places, shopping, school, etc. Shop. It's her favorite place. But then I also realized that it was also about not just getting to a place, but also about her quality of life when she was there. So these are all the things I had to learn, make a space inaccessible to Elise, even if she can be there. I also learned that ADA is a starting point, but it's not. Compliance does not mean accessibility. So this is a hotel room that was supposed to be accessible, but when she got in it, she realized that she couldn't maneuver around the furniture to get to the bathroom. Another piece of my learning journey has been to understand that accessibility is about belonging. And thank you so much, the person who was up here before, because you said it. So this is a wonderful video about what would a world look like if it was designed for people with disabilities. Because the real goal is to belong in a space, not just to be there, and to enjoy the spaces that you're in. So this is one of our favorite restaurants in the Kansas City area because it is one of the most accessible and friendly spaces I have been in. And plus the food is really, really good. So we want to talk about why accessibility is important. I just want to point out that one of the reasons is, as our family has learned, anybody at any time can experience a disability. In fact, 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some kind of disability, and with Elise, mobility is 1 in 10.
Raise your hand if you've ever used any of the things that are on screen right now. Yeah. Audiobooks, cruise control, bendy straws, text-to-speech, closed captioning, electric toothbrushes.
You said raise your hands.
Oh.
Okay.
Lever handles, typewriters. These are just a few of the products that were intentionally made for people with disabilities that are now used for people everywhere.
Let me do this one. Accessibility leads to changes that benefit the whole community. That's why it's called the curb effect, because curbs were initially cut out for wheelchairs, but then everybody figured out that that was an easy way to go. You've never heard anybody say, oh, I wish we didn't have an option for an elevator or an escalator, or I hate chairs that have more than one height, because disability really affects us all and helps us all. Yes, okay.
For example, people spend money at local businesses when they can get in the door. More mobility means people can work and have time for energy and recreation. The whole community benefits from when more population can reach places.
And are fully included. So this is the property, and thank you to Brendan who made this article. But this is the property that is now going to be our house. Interfaith Housing, and I can't thank them enough, invited us into this journey of discovering what a fully accessible housing would look like. Not just can she get around in her wheelchair, which right now we have a stair lift that doesn't always work, which makes it really hard to get in and out, but are these spaces that she can thrive in? I believe that accessibility means community. So this is one of the fun activities that he likes to do in the library. And again, library is a great space to get into and to feel like, yeah, this is a place that was made for me, where I can interact with other people. And I think for me, what it comes down to is recognizing that accessibility, we can frame it as helping a person overcome a barrier, but you can also frame it as giving the community access to all the gifts and contributions and resources and experience and wisdom that people with disabilities bring to our community. And I think she's worth it.
Yeah. Just thank you for Hutch and like the interface housing for allowing us to go on this journey and really become better. Yeah.
Oh, and for our church and Beyond Barriers too.
In baseball and the need to know, Brendan Ulmer is up next to talk about his love of baseball, where it came from, and what it is about the sport that he finds so endlessly fascinating. Please welcome Brendan.
Thank you. So, for most of my conscious life, I have been obsessed with baseball. And one of the main things I found about this is that it is not an age-appropriate interest for me to have, unfortunately. I went to high school with like 2,000 kids, and if a single one of them absorbed baseball the same way I did not know about it. I would love to have. I did not. This is the first game that really stuck in my craw. As a baseball fan would, I went back through the logs and figure out what exact game it was. It was July 22nd, 2011. Here it is in beautiful 2011 standard definition. Somewhere in these pixels, there is a baseball about to fly over the left fielder's head. When I was 9 years old, I was at a sleepover at my friend's house, and I watched the movie Moneyball, which is if you want your kid to grow up insufferable, show them Moneyball. I love Moneyball to this day. It reshaped the way I thought about the sport, and I thought I was a genius. Moneyball, for people who don't know, is a biographical film about the 2011 A's. They got over 100 wins that year, despite having the lowest payroll. For those, just to kind of put that in perspective, it's kind of like winning the lottery with a ticket you found in the trash. They weren't even trying, really. But they succeeded. And is anyone here familiar with Aaron Sorkin? He wrote the film, zippy dialogue, smart characters, just dunking on dumb characters. I loved it as a kid, but again, do not let your children watch Aaron Sorkin properties. They know, those are my parents. Anyway, when I was a freshman in college, I read the book. And not to be cliche, but the book, it is better than the movie. One of the things they talk a lot about in the book that they don't really talk about in the movie is where a lot of these stats came from. A lot of them were popularized or invented by a man named Bill James, who is actually a Kansas native. Bill James is kind of hard to explain, but for people who really like sports statistics, he's a huge deal. He is the big guy. To kind of put it in perspective what his reputation is like, he was once in an episode of The Simpsons where his one line was, "I made baseball as fun as doing your taxes." I think he's kind of misunderstood to some extent. As the book painstakingly points out, he is just as much of a writer, if not more of a writer, than he is a mathematician. Someone who has as much love for the people who participate in the history as he does about the stats. And I think it's important that people think about stats in this way, especially in sports. Well, actually not especially in sports. Stats can only tell you one thing. They can tell you what happened. They cannot tell you what will happen. They cannot tell you the quality of a certain player. They can only tell you what happened. And in that way, it's kind of the output of an unseen, of a system you can see but can't really quantify. To break that down, Bobby Witt Jr. here had a quarter of a second to decide even if he wanted to swing at this pitch or not. From then, he had to be precise and quick enough to give himself any chance to get a hit. This is a miracle. The fact that he's able to get hit off this is a miracle. But there is one group of people who cannot appreciate these miracles as miracles, and those are the people who run the teams. They have to figure out the cost of a miracle and figure out who's going to give them the most miracles for the least amount of money. And for whatever reason, baseball fans in particular, more than basketball fans, more than football fans, love to do market research right alongside the executives. I do not understand it. I don't understand a lot of these stats. I love baseball. I look at the colors. Red means good. Blue means bad. And in order to kind of like break it down for people like me who are smart but not that smart, they have invented the stat called WAR, which essentially kind of grades out a player over a certain period of time. But the truth about WAR is that it's kind of intellectual fast food, and this is why. No one knows how it's calculated. I mean, a few people do. Most people don't. So in that, people can't really build on the pre-existing knowledge of it. And it also kind of takes away from the enjoyment of the sport. Real fast food is better than intellectual fast food. It's about hot dogs. It's about the aesthetic experience of the sport, enjoying the sights, sounds, the feeling, the warm summer air. And on top of that, it's really not what Bill James wanted in the first place. Kind of as I was talking about earlier, he wanted stats to give way for more better stats, not to create like a catch-all stat that means good or bad. And that is kind of what's happened with that stat in particular, and it's disappointed him. And part of the reason I know that is because his email used to be public. I reached out to him because he lives in Lawrence, and I went to KU at the time, and we shared some meals. He's 6'4", 76 years old, and has a reputation for not suffering fools. And while I consider myself to be somewhat foolish, he was pretty nice to me. We talked about mostly goofy stuff. We didn't really talk about like dry statistics. I use this picture because one of the things we talked about is how foreign-born players often come into the league as like slight, speedy players and leave big, hulking sluggers because they get unlimited access to calorie-dense American foods. Ultimately, I think baseball could do better if they made statistical analysis more of like a fringe hobby and not like a prerequisite to enjoying the sport. And because these players, think about all the players and the literally millions of hours of hard work they've had to like be able to do things that like Bobby Wood Jr. can. Through my job at the Hutchinson Tribune, I've been able to meet quite a few announcers weirdly quite often. And one of the things that it kind of led me to realize is that the way they get to watch the games, and they watch every game, is kind of the best way to look at it. Because they get to know these players personally. It allows them to kind of ride the ups and downs better because they care. This guy's, his name was Brett Phillips. He played 7 years. He batted 187, which is not very good. He was given up on by a very bad Royals team. They traded him for a player who retired before making the majors. But in 2020, he had a walk-off hit in the World Series. Baseball is about miracles.
On May 18th, 2025, an EF3 tornado touched down for more than 30 miles and plowed into Plevna, Kansas. This is one family's experience of surviving that storm and how the community helped pick up the pieces. Please welcome Christina Stropes with Tornado, a Love Story.
If you live in Kansas, you know the drill. A tornado warning means you take shelter. I've never been one of those people who tries to catch a glimpse of the funnel. On the night of May 18th, around 11 p.m., my brother called and told me, "I'm watching a storm chaser following a tornado on the ground heading straight to Plevna. Get to your shelter." Our storm shelter is a root cellar, buried into a hill with wooden doors. My husband, Julian, grabbed us a couple of chairs, and I scooped up our sleeping toddler. We were in the shelter watching the link my brother had sent when we learned the tornado was 2 miles wide, with radar indicating that it was tearing up the earth and sending it thousands of feet into the air. We turned off the video. We could hear the sirens starting. I imagined the tornado tearing open the earth above our heads. Our ears popped with the air pressure. I said a prayer of thanks for my life and centered myself in the thought that if I died, people would know I had loved them. Our daughter held out her baby doll and offered it to Julian, saying, "Here, Daddy, this helps me when I'm scared." After a while, everything got quiet. The shelter had held. The way Julian describes what he saw when we finally ventured out is almost sublime. You know how when you walk into a room where everyone is praying with their heads bowed? It was like that, only in nature. Everything, the grass, the trees, was prostrated over the ground. We tried to survey the damage in the dark. Emergency responders were there almost immediately. My brother and his friends managed to get around the downed power lines to our house soon after and found us okay. He wrapped me in the biggest hug and took us to a cabin for the night. I kept checking the news, trying to find out how my neighbors had fared. Our house was an earthen home, built by my uncle of straw bales and cob, which is like adobe, made of clay, sand, and straw. The walls were more than 3 feet thick with a living roof. It was cozy, non-toxic, a beautiful space, overlooking the Ninesky River Valley, and it was incredibly sturdy with most of the walls still standing after the direct hit. The roof was missing, except for a section that had crashed down onto our recently vacated bed. Our shed, which had housed Julian's art studio, was completely gone. The van was out in the cow pasture, crushed. Amazingly, my car was still in the spot where it had been parked, but it had taken quite a beating. The windmill next to it was a tangled knot of metal on the ground. When I ask my husband what stays with him the most, it is the deep care and empathy returned to him from our daughter in a moment of fear. What stays with me the most is being rained on by kindness in the days that followed. If I had made every slide a list of thank yous, I would not have enough time. No one asked my political affiliation or my religion. They just went out of their way to help us. Everything of ours that wasn't broken or gone was filthy. It was covered in broken glass and dirt. Family and friends spent the next days sorting through the mess to salvage what belongings we could and hauling stuff to Hutch to store. I found myself unable to think for days after the storm. Someone would ask if I wanted to keep or toss something. I would try to decide, but nothing would compute in my brain. Donations of clothing, water, food, and supplies started to pour in, and they filled the Plevna Auditorium. Hot meals were served there multiple times a day for volunteers and storm victims. United Way and Red Cross organized a resource fair to help people figure out how to get whatever help they needed. Our United Way caseworker, Amy, continues to check in with us still to connect us with any resources she can find that might help us in our process toward recovery. I had no idea how we were going to deal with the ruins of our house, but a couple of volunteers and their machines came and spent the better part of 2 days knocking it down and scooping it up the debris. The VOAD disaster response paid for the many big dumpsters needed to haul off the wreckage. One of the volunteers, Mark, had had his own house destroyed by a tornado several years prior. He was so kind to me as I cried, watching my beloved home be flattened. It turned out that this guy on the tractor, Grant, had been out to help us before. He was on the volunteer firefighting crew that helped save our house 3 years ago during a wildfire, and now he was back to help us again. Someone arranged for me and a few other ladies whose homes had been damaged or destroyed to have our hair done the weekend after the storm. See how good we look. Since I hadn't even combed my hair all week, this really felt a little like the start of a return to normalcy. Someone donated a pickup truck, and the Salvation Army got it titled to us. My mom did so many loads of our filthy tornado laundry, her washer broke. Family and friends walked through 30 acres of pasture, cleaning up debris for months after the storm. Here we are posing in the dumpster one rainy cleanup day, and the unexpected kindnesses just kept trickling in. Our mechanic didn't charge us for his labor to fix the car. A friend started an online fundraising page to help us get by. People were incredibly generous. We've been living in my husband's childhood bedroom since the storm. My gracious in-laws welcomed us, along with approximately 50 dolls and stuffies rescued from the house. They also welcomed our 3 rambunctious cats, who happily all survived the tornado. And this hospitality remains despite the cats' attempts to shred my in-laws' couch and chairs and wallpaper. I know, they look so innocent. We have so much, and there are many who do not, and I don't know why this is. A U.S. Census Bureau survey asked people how they'd been affected by storms, floods, and fires. About 1.5% of people, an average of over 3 million folks, reported being displaced by their home from their homes by a natural disaster in the last year alone. Most said they were out of their homes for less than a month, but about a third reported being displaced for 6 months or longer, or never having returned home. Our plan is to rebuild on our land, but things are taking a while. We're planning an earth-sheltered home that will be resistant to another disaster and hoping we can break ground soon. In the meantime, I'm still using a bottle of shampoo that was donated as part of the tornado response. Every morning when I wash my hair, I'm grateful for your generosity and care. And I say, I love you too. I'd like to close with part of a poem from Hutchinson's famous poet, William Stafford. It could happen any time, tornado, earthquake, Armageddon. It could happen. Or sunshine, love, and salvation. It could, you know. That's why we wake and look out. No guarantees in this life, but some bonuses, like morning, like right now.
And very last, but certainly not least, Hutchinson Public Library Director Gregg Wamsley. This year marks the 125 years of public library service in Hutchinson. Gregg will share anecdotes and pivotal decisions that brought our library to where it is today. Oh no, and oh yes, you'll also hear about the ghost. Here's Gregg with Choosing Community for 125 years.
What a terrible picture. Oh, thanks. What great stories. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay. Tonight, I'd like to show you a sliver of Hutchinson Public Library history, since we're 125 years old this year, and tell you about some of the giants on whose shoulders I stand. Public libraries reflect their communities. Our library reflects the foresight, dedication, and hard work of some amazing librarians, board members, and patrons. HPL has its roots in a subscription library started in 1895 by the Hutchinson Women's Club, helped by W.I. Morgan, Hutchinson news editor, who provided space. But subscriptions excluded people, and the Women's Club wanted a facility for all citizens. So by 1900, the club had successfully lobbied for a tax levy for a public library. The Women's Club presented the city its collection of 500 books and $25 for magazine subscriptions, and the Hutchinson Public Library opened to the public January 12, 1901, in rooms in the City Hall, with Ethel Colville as first librarian, and her pay was $20 a month. There were immediate growing pains, and by 1902, a group of citizens, including the Women's Club, had applied to the Carnegie Corporation and received a gift of $15,000 to build a building. The first board meeting was held in that building in 1903, July 1, and the new building with Pearl Leidy as head librarian. The library was popular and saw steady growth through in use, resulting in the expansion of that building there with a second grant from Andrew Carnegie, the guy on the slide before. But that building was landlocked. So we fast forward to the late 1940s, and Ida Day, our ghost, was a real person. And she saw the need for a modern building. It's hard to encapsulate what Ida managed here, but this library giant galvanized the library board, the public, city officials, and then guided the design, and then saw the building built, and then oversaw the move, and yet still had time for tea every afternoon, promptly at 3 p.m. That's the kind of lady she was. Ida Day pushed ahead, and controversy surrounded the purchase of a bookmobile in 1952 as an unnecessary expense that would mire the library in overhead costs. But Ida was right, and by 1958, over 340,000 items had circulated out of the bookmobile service, and it became a beloved fixture in Hutchinson neighborhoods for decades to come. Next, we come to Ernestine Gilliland. She was a true Renaissance woman and another giant who influenced shows today at HPL. She was a librarian, a scientist, an outdoors person, and a photographer. And she's seen here on the right. Mrs. Gilliland in the 50s and 60s started the circulating art collection that we still have upstairs, services for the visually impaired. And Mrs. Gilliland was director when HPL crossed the 100,000 volume mark, making it a complete library in the parlance of public libraries. She also saw an expansion of the building and later went on to be state librarian. HPL and other Kansas libraries focused on cooperative efforts in the 60s and 70s. Statewide cooperation in the form of lending materials and extending services to rural communities expanded greatly. The South Central Kansas Library System was based in this building, and their rotating book collection supplemented libraries in smaller towns far and wide. The new multi-county library systems and librarians of that era, such as Dwayne Johnson, another future state librarian, created many other services extending library service outside the walls. This is a picture of the Mail a Book program. Look at how many, I can't even believe it. It's crazy. Over time, though, many patrons have also left a lasting mark on HPL. These patrons, such as the folks in this slide, the members of the Anches family, set up for our library a foundation that has provided substantial support to the library's collection for more than 40 years, and likely into the future for decades. Like the Ancheses, visiting the Youth Learning Center here that bears their name right on the other side of the building, others like L.A. Bunker, the Nordstedt Emmerichs, the Benners, Arlene Jennings, Debbie Mosier, and too many other names to list have helped make this library what it is today. And so many have donated their time, volunteering at HPL. In 1983, volunteers Neva Jane Upp and later Ron Allen reinvigorated the Friends of the Library. And the Friends have been an invaluable partner for us in making the library what it is today. This picture shows one of their big book sales out on the sidewalk. For decades, the Friends have raised funds for the library and pleased many, many bargain hunters. The Friends process and sell thousands of used books each year, right over here, and sell them for 50 cents or $1 in the Friends shop. These volunteers have made it possible for the library to provide programs, enhance collections, and generally be so much better than it would be otherwise. Our bookmobile may be long gone, but we reach out to our community in different ways today. Our van brings our staff members to daycares to do story times for the youngest in our community and to deliver entertainment and reading material to our community's homebound, directly to their doors. Since story times were started in 1912, programming has been a staple at HPL and continues to cultivate the love of reading and learning. Whether at a festival, with our community partners, or in our building, our dedicated staff, some of the giants I work alongside today, continue to dazzle and amaze. And so we come to the present moment in a second. Because apparently I'm talking too fast. There we go. And it's not technically today. This is a slide from a couple years back, but you get the idea. Thank you to the Talk20 team. I owe you guys a lot. And thank you to the library staff who helped make this happen. For a wonderful decade and a wonderful decade-long experience. I want to say thank you to all of you who are making Talk20 this unique activity such a success. So thank you. And please remember that because of the efforts of the folks I've talked about tonight, plus many others, the library, your library, is a place to gather, young and old, regardless of means, where you can explore new interests, learn from each other, learn together, or just sit down and read in relative peace. So what happens next? As many others have said tonight, I know there are giants sitting in this gathering tonight, waiting to try out their ideas to make our community stronger. I hope that you find the courage to share your ideas and spark those conversations that lead our community to a greater level of understanding. And maybe the Hutchinson Public Library can help you on that path.
Yeah. I told them they all had to stand up here this time. Usually they run away. But, oh, you guys, yeah. Thank you. That is very generous of you. I hope you can see why we gave Gregg the last word, the Gregg and the library. I hope that you all keep coming back here and that you keep bringing your ideas to Gregg and making him say, sure, we'll try that, because that's how this happened, right? Yeah, we'll try that. we do want to, usually we just kind of make some quick comments and send you out the door, but allow us a couple more minutes tonight. So as I said, for 12 years and 23 gatherings, Talk20 Hutch has been a civic ritual, a place to sit shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and remember that connection is not automatic. It's something we have to practice. So to all of our presenters tonight and across all 23 editions, thank you for your courage and your generosity. To the public library and its remarkable staff, thank you for being our home, for doing all the work to set all this up every time. To Christopher Acker and Lucas Singleton, thank you for broadcasting these stories and capturing them so that we can watch them later and for all time. I think Gregg and I were talking earlier. Gregg Holmes was, as you could tell, one of Patsy's dearest friends, and he recorded just on his own, a volition, the first 5 years of Talk20. So we're going to figure out how to make sure that all of the talks back to 2014 are archived and are available forever. That's what a library does, right? So before we close, we want to invite you into one final ritual. And you guys already kind of did this. You kind of stole the punchline. But if you have ever attended a Talk20, which is all of you, please stand. And I want you to take a look around and look at each other, because this is what made Talk20 possible. Not a podium, not a format. It was the people. It was you. So let's offer ourselves a standing ovation for showing up, for making something like this happen for 12 years. So this is the final Talk20 Hutch, but it's not the end of what Talk20 stood for. So if tonight reminded you of something you've been missing, and if it stirred your desire to build bridges, as Patsy reminded us, we hope that you will do that. And we hope that you'll continue the conversations and start something small and just be together and create the gathering or place that you wish existed, and invite us too. So good night, everybody, and take care of each other.